To everyone. Thanks for letting me join today. Should be a very casual talk. Wasn't 100% sure about who I'll be joining in the mix of people, so I definitely have not or tried not to get in the weeds here for everybody. So I'll talk a little bit about my topic, and then I'll share a little bit about the company I work for, user interviews, and then I'll make my email and LinkedIn available to everybody. But a little about me really quick. I live in Golden, Colorado. I'm a dog lover, I'm a skier, I'm a bike nerd. And for my day job, I'm a sales leader, but it's only one of the things I do. So my talk today is going to be about AI in user research. Just kidding. I feel like everything you hear about today is AI in user research. So it's not going to be about AI. As helpful as that may be for some people, I'm not too into that right now. I'm sure I'll give it a shot one of these days. I'm sure it'll come into my workspace. But what I'm going to talk about for you folks is gaining leadership buy-in during a challenging economic climate. Right now, as we know, it's very, very interesting times for a lot of companies and individuals. My talk is a little bit geared toward some of the messaging of like being in the UX space. But I think for folks who are watching this or who will watch this that are going to be potentially fundraising for their own project, just trying to advocate for a project internally, or just trying to build relationships. I think a lot of these things are really valuable. And it's all tying back to just getting to know people and communicating effectively. So if anybody has questions in the interim, you can stop me. I will pause at the end for questions, but don't feel bad about raising your hand. So I'm a salesperson. I love an agenda, just so you guys know where I'm going. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, who can leverage this talk, not really focused on any one group. And then user research from 30,000 feet up. Obviously, there's many, many layers and weeds we can get into, but just to set the frame and the stage, I'm going to talk about user research specifically as like a whole. Defining some terms, just so we're all on the same page. Worst and best case scenarios, very high level here. We can talk about some examples there if we want. RRR, I love a good acronym. So this is relationships, riding the wave, and then reverse engineering. And then a gift from UI, future gift, of course, and then some Q&A. So who can leverage this talk? Everyone. Everybody can take advantage of this. This is very, very basic stuff. It's not science. So anybody who's in an organization, again, as an individual, fundraising for a side project, whatever it may be, everybody can take advantage of this. So user research, big surprise here. So whoever thought about the name of user research was really original. It's the practice of researching users. So regardless of the methodology, the big picture goal of user research is to understand and build empathy for users in order to make better decisions, build better product experiences, and create solutions that people actually want and need. I think expanding this out a little bit, some people look at this as an equation to profit, right? So if you think about the iPhone and Android, they've really focused on some of those core user experiencing things. You can see the camera right now on the iPhone, every generation gets better and better and better and better. And every time they reiterate a new product, it pushes another product out of the market. For example, the stabilizer in the iPhone camera, right? GoPro is no longer as powerful. So the more you focus on your users, the more you understand how your users are using product, the more you can drive decisions that actually impact the end user. So user research can fall in two major groups, right? Existing consumers, people that have already used your product. And then, of course, the target market, right? Finding that target user, the user that you don't have yet, and building a product that they want, building a product they can use. Cool. So defining some terms in my talk, very, very high level. What is leadership buy-in? So gaining leadership buy-in is gaining the approval and the support of leaders in charge. This can span from like a simple person saying like, yeah, Jackie, you're good to go, all the way to having leaders fully understanding and proactively getting behind a given project. So this, gets into the real powerful stuff of approving funds and clearing up funds for use. Removing roadblocks, so you're dealing with less red tape, and providing continued access to resources as your project is moving forward, ensuring maximum success. Challenging economic climate. I am not an economist. This is probably the most vague definition of challenging economic climate you could think of. But in short, businesses are bracing for the worst right now. And this has decision makers on guard. Some of you may already be dealing with this inside your LinkedIn connections, inside your existing companies. We're seeing layoffs. We're seeing budget freezes. We're seeing some side projects get cut internally because decision makers are now more cautious than ever and tightening budgets. This is due to some high level factors, right? So just increased uncertainty. People are not sure what's going to happen. Threats of recession. People are worried that the economy is going to drop off a cliff. Rising interest rates, and then which leads to lack of capital. So businesses they're not wheeling and dealing and moving large funds around like they used to. So what we can see is as teams try to do new things, they're getting a lot of roadblocks. So I think to frame this, two very high level scenarios. So worst case scenario is you as a researcher or as an individual contributor, you spend your after work hours, you're crossing every T, dotting every I. Every aspect of your project is perfect. You're organizing everything. You have your methodology, and you go and finally present this, and you ask for the green light, and you get, no. Someone just says like, this is not going to happen. And the outcome of this worst case scenario too could be, making a really bad product decision and having to like research it down the line, et cetera. The ideal situation is you've built strong relationships with the folks that that are in charge. And leadership is fully invested in the power and outcome of your work, like we talked about. Then you have the green light and tools to find the groundbreaking product discoveries that Of course, because we're the user researchers, we're presenting that work, we look like amazing gurus, right? Because we went and found all those insights in the data and in the issues. So I think worst case, right? We do all this work, we get the no, and then we watch the company or the product or the project falter before us. Best case scenario is we are able to navigate those channels and get approval for our work. Cool. So RRR, that's not what I'm going to talk about, but I don't know if you have seen this movie. It's absolutely amazing. It's a Bollywood movie on Netflix. It's incredible. Just worth watching. But in all seriousness, I try to isolate this to 3 tactics that you can apply in pretty much any company or organization situation. So number 1, relationships. I'm a sociologist. I'm a salesperson. I love relationships. Riding the wave, and then reverse engineering. So for each of these, I'm going to break them down a little bit and talk about 3 examples. And then, of course, we can talk about some, this is usually a good time to do some Q&A as far as like experiences people have had. But cool. Relationships. Relationships are number 1, especially in organizations. The example I gave earlier of the worst case scenario is if you don't know who's in charge, you don't have relationships with the people at the top, and you go and ask for approval for something, they're going to say, who is this person? So before you go asking leaders for support, get to know them. Don't be shy, right? And I think the folks here who are putting themselves out in meetups, et cetera, but you really want to make sure you know the folks who are in charge. So simple question here you can ask yourself is, who are the leaders and the stakeholders? So leaders, for example, C-level, folks in charge, department heads, people that are in charge of a given project. And then, of course, stakeholders, right? So if, for example, product is going to push a new level of functionality, there's probably going to be some engineers and some team leads, some product folks who are key players in that work, right? So just start to figure out and understand who is in charge of this stuff, who is the leader in the organization. Get to know what's most important to them. This could be by asking a few icebreaker questions, like, what are you reading right now? What are you into? Because if someone comes to me and asks me about all this sales work we're doing right now, yeah, it's my work. It's kind of boring. But if they've asked me about skiing, I'm totally going to talk to them about skiing. So I think get to know what's important to them on both levels. And then what do you have in common, right? So this can be on a work level. What specific initiatives are you working on? What is in common with their stuff? A very, very simple example here is, let's say the company is worried about the economy and they're trying to protect against churn, right? That's a very broad company goal, but maybe one of your product focuses is increasing customer engagement, right? How do we increase customer engagement with existing customers? Two separate things, right? One revenue leader is focused on churn, keeping people on the product, keeping people paying their bills, but you're also focused on surprise and delight, right? How do I build the product and provide gifts to the product team that marry those two, right? So what do you both have in common? And again, this can also be fun stuff like you both have kids, you both like biking, whatever it may be. As silly as that sounds, getting to know the stakeholders is setting the stage for what's coming next. The other key thing here, which a lot of people don't think about, I like the term ride the wave, but leverage the momentum of existing initiatives. The example I just gave around like the churn thing. A lot of times each company will have a quarterly fireside chat or you'll have a quarterly kickoff. Get to know what goals are already in motion, right? If there's a big product push that's already happening, if there is a new marketing initiative that's going on, what is already in motion? What is getting the funding? What is getting the attention of leaders? So what's in motion, and then how could you impact them? So again, let's say marketing is trying to drive more signups to a given product, right? We're trying to get more people interested in the product. But you guys do a bunch of user research and find out that the sign up page, the button's too small, right? Obviously, simple example, but if you're trying to revamp the website, but they're trying to work on signups, sounds like two different things, but it may be the case that the whole sign up page and the website experience is kind of lacking, right? So is there a way you can jump in on that project? And then going back to relationships, right? So who is leading this initiative? Who's in charge of which quarterly initiative or monthly initiative? And then can they advocate for you? So they may be a little further down the chain, right? It might be a product leader or an engineer. But if you can get to know them and you both have this thing in common and you both hate that button on the purchasing page, again, simple example, but you both think that button on the purchasing page is too small. It's like, hey, let's grab a coffee and talk about that feature. Let's talk about that algorithm. Let's talk about how we ship this product. Because they may be able to say, hey, Jackie's actually working on this user research project. She has it already moving, and I think we can benefit from her insight. The final thing here is reverse engineer. So I think as researchers, it's very, very easy for us to get lost in the weeds of our work, right? Because we spend so much one-on-one time with people. There's a lot of biases in our work, right? We're seeing people make these same mistakes, same and time again, or we see these survey results and it's the same result. We have to remember that we don't want to lose our audience in the weeds. We want to quantify the end impact of our work. So I've thrown out a few examples already of like marketing initiatives or revenue initiatives, right, where they're trying to lower churn. So understand the end result of your research. Quantify the value of this research in your audience's terms. So this could be amount of time spent on something, savings and cost, profit, etc. I keep, for some reason in my head, there's that silly example of a purchase button that's too small, but they're trying to drive online sales and that button's too small. Instead of you going to someone and saying, hey, talking to a lot of people and this button's kind of small. And, I think, there's all different areas we can go about. It's like, listen, 50% of the people that I surveyed bailed out of the sales experience because that button was too small, right? So it's trying to frame it in their terminology. Obviously, trust your work too, right? Like you're going to have the expertise. Some of those things you'll find out. You'll take the Coursera course, but trust the fact that sometimes when you're going to someone for buy-in, when you're going to a leadership for that resource, you want to speak their terms. So avoid boring them with the process. Speak directly to those initiatives that we just talked about and how your work can help it. So it's like, hey, this is an initiative for you. I know what matters to you. I know that your goal is X, Y, and Z. My work is going to help you do X, Y, and Z. And then here's the why. think the other thing that's hard to do, which is risky, is showcase the risk. Like, what's at stake if your work doesn't proceed? And then frame it in their terms again. So of course, if your work doesn't proceed, there's needed research, et cetera. But like, hey, if the work doesn't proceed, we're at a risk of losing this profit. We're at a risk of not hitting your quarterly goal. If the work doesn't proceed, you're going to be behind. How will this slow progress, right? So you want to reverse engineer. So I think just recapping these relationships, be yourself and get to know the people that are in charge. Spend time with them, be confident around them. Just build those relationships. Number 2, ride the wave, right? So figure out of those relationships, figure out what matters to those people, figure out what they're hustling on, figure out what they care about, and jump on the wave. Try to relate your work to theirs in some way. Not always going to be easy. It's not perfect. It's not a silver bullet, but especially when you're communicating to folks, you want to really make sure that you're getting their approval and their understanding. And then finally, reverse engineer, right? So think about the outcomes that matter to your audience, to your CEO, to your CO. Could be budget, could be churn, could be marketing. Figure out what matters most to them and try to use those metrics to reverse engineer your work rather than starting with the process and the methodology and all the aspects of your study. Think about if your study goes well and you can uncover X, Y, or Z, here's what this would impact. Because at the end of the day, we don't want this. You don't want to do all this work and have someone be like, yeah, thanks, Scott. No. You want to have someone say like, this is awesome. Take my money. Here's my full funding and let's make this happen. Cool. So I'll pause on that because I do want to talk about user interviews for a minute. But I think very, very high level topic. I want to pause for questions if anybody has any. You obviously don't have to, but yeah.
No question, but I really like the idea of taking some of the momentum of the big initiatives at work and kind of pairing it with your goals and those similarities there. I feel like sometimes I get caught up in the in my own weeds and I get really passionate about this one specific thing. But when I zoom out, it's like, well, the leadership doesn't care about this. But I feel like, the use like let's say like the users of my website, like they, if I can do something that they enjoy and they'll use my website more, or, someone gets something that they need from it, then that really does drive business goals. So why not? Yeah, no, I really like the initiatives and kind of tying that in for more momentum.
Yeah, totally. It does. I mean, it does take a little bit of work, but I think like
Yeah.
if you think about the upside versus again the worst case scenario where you've done all this work and you're in the weeds and you're maybe investing some more of your own personal time and then like you finally get that face time with the leader, right? You finally get that
Yeah.
moment to like pitch your case and then it's like, oh, I wasted all this time and I got to know versus getting to know the folks, trying to align it a little bit. More often than not, people are like, hey, like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm working on. Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't realize what your work attributes to. Um, yeah. And especially now, again, like more than ever, you have to start with the leaders, like the stakeholders, because
Hmm.
something I see a lot in my job, I talk to researchers every day. My sales team talks to researchers every day. Is we have so many researchers come to us all excited about what our software can do, and
Yeah.
they're so in tune with their project. They know exactly what their project is. They know who their audience needs to be. And then we ask them, have you started to talk to anybody about funding this project and funding this work? And they're like, I'm not really sure. And then about a week
Mm.
later, they meet with their leadership and they say, hey, budgets are actually frozen right now. I don't have approval for this work. So it's happening a lot,
Yeah.
more than we're used to. So I think like if that team had just started in the reverse, as much as I want to talk to people, if they had gone to their leadership and said, hey, like I think we're going to approach this software and here's why, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then leadership says, like, you're good to go. We like this idea.
Yeah, it's so hard. I'm where I work, we have a very low kind of UX maturity, and getting that alignment is hard, but it's so needed.
Yep.
Scott, you popped up. Do you have a question?
No, not really a question. more of a couple of statements. I like the, I think you hit the nail on the head with relationships. I think one of the biggest things for me lately has been, probably in the last year, is what I've been calling partnership framing, which
Mhm.
is, kind of understanding the relationship that you have with, whether it's a product team, whether it's an engineering team, whether it's a business unit, whether it's whatever, what are the needs, or and then you kind of made the point here about reverse engineering too, and for me that's the business, the business alignment, and Jacqueline kind of mentioned that. So I think those are really good points, and I think they're right. I think it's right in where the market is and what people are thinking about. um, you know Understanding, in fact, I've gone and redone my portfolio case studies on a deep level, and I've reframed all of them to be partnership focused. You know, in this scenario, I was building a product for these customers, and that's fair. But when I'm selling my case studies to somebody for a project, they want to know how my relationships, happen with the product team, with the engineering team. What problems did the product team have? For example, well, or I would say the engineering team is always the same thing. It's that handoff uh,
Mm.
risk that happens with the handoff to an engineering team, and the feasibility challenge that come from that, and the design debt that results from that type of stuff. And so understanding that relationship and creating a partnership with those folks, and making sure that you're not handing off materials to that team that is that's going to drive their dev debt into the ground, is a really useful factor. But I think it's true too in terms of reverse engineering. I even advocate for starting with the business goal, right? Start there. What is the business goal? Oh, we need to improve. And by the way, product teams know this, right? This is what they're doing. They're sitting there doing every day. They're saying, who are the customers that we need to talk to? What is the current market that we're in? What's the new market that we're looking to get to? That might be, when I say product team, that might be a marketing team. It just depends on what the organization's, whatever it is. But they know. So going off and doing research without kind of having that knowledge would be a pretty big waste of time. But so I always advocate business first in terms of yeah. So great talk. Definitely hit the right points. I appreciate it, and I love the humor.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. That expression is such a good point. The design debt, the debt that comes from potentially making a wrong decision. I think that's like such a good way to frame it. And also the research debt down the line, right? So they finally come back to you after making a poor business decision. It's like, hey, you got to research this, like dig into this, and that's an interesting expression. Well, cool. I can talk about user interviews a little bit. I know, Jackie, if I'm correct, we're coming up on time, correct?
Uh, yep.
Cool.
Yep, end at 7:30, but we don't have to go all the way till.
Cool. I don't know if you guys have, for folks watching and folks that will watch, I work for user interviews, and that is primarily a panel tool. So we help user researchers gain access to participants across 7 countries. And we are pretty much the leading panel tool. And one of our biggest value points is we help folks get access to participants in about an hour. So considering some of those things we talked about, time savings and all that stuff, we're helping a lot of teams, everything from enterprise organizations all the way down to research agencies specifically, find both participants quickly. And then we also help teams do the research logistics, right? So managing incentives, scheduling the actual user research, and putting things into people's calendars, sending the unmoderated links, all that fun stuff. So that's our recruitment tool. We also have a research CRM. So if you have your own panel of participants, you can upload participants into the user research tool and still get all the panel offload logistics, right? So launching projects, sending screeners to those participants, managing the invite rules, making sure you're not over inviting or under inviting folks. And then of course, automating the incentives. So I like to share just a little bit of our panel for people because this is usually pretty eye-opening, but this one's actually out of date. It's a month old, but we're at about 4 million participants total, spanning 7 countries. And then we have participants in all 50 US states and 73,000 professions across 150 industries. So we have an incredibly strong B2B panel, which is where we stand out from some of our competition. And then our panel is reliable. It's 100% proprietary. So these are our participants. We get folks from things like TikTok and LinkedIn. We'll also go out and market to specific groups. And then 98% completed sessions result in positive feedback. Like I mentioned, less than 1 hour median time to your first match participant. So we're really helping research teams offload some of those logistics of spending times on Craigslist and combing through LinkedIn, all that fun stuff. And then we have a participant fraud team. So 0.3% of participants are flagged as suspicious and less than 8% no-show rate on our panel. So we do quite a bit of work to make sure that the folks you're getting for that study, whether the big project is pretty dialed. And then we talked about here, I just want to not be too in depth here, but yeah, looks like I copied the same slide in different formats. So it's all good. But yeah, if anybody wants to talk more about user interviews, Jackie has my email. So feel free to reach out to Jackie. Anybody coming from UXGA at any point in time, we'd love to offer you guys 10% off user interview subscriptions. But I also understand that some of you guys may be doing some side projects. So keep in mind, we also have a couple different pay-as-you-go products. So for teams who just want to maybe buy 5 participants, 2 participants, etc., we have a pay-as-you-go tool that's very, very easy and hands-free to use. So I think as you approach user research, focus on relationships, get to know the folks internally, but there's a lot of really good tools out there too that'll help you save time, and your time is valuable. So that's pretty much it. I don't want to bore you guys with the good stuff, but if anybody is interested in talking about user interviews, Jackie, feel free to send them my way.
Absolutely. And I will also be posting your email and your info on the meetup page and then
Cool.
also in our Slack channel as well.
Awesome.
So anyone is welcome to hit you up. Yes. And then for those watching on YouTube, feel free to message me through Meetup. All right. All right. I'm going to stop our